Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're returning, if you're new to the channel, welcome. This is Scott's Comics Retro Review, and I realize that's a mouthful, so you can shorten it any way you want to. Scott's Retro Review, SCRR, Scott's Comics, SCRR, however you want to do it. But in any case, this channel is dedicated to people who want to get into reading comics but don't know where to begin. I'm going to point you in the direction of some really great stories. Or this is for people who are they're reading comics already, but they haven't read what I'm reviewing, and something that I recommend that people read. In either case, there is a method to my madness for those of you who are new to the channel. And my first couple of videos, I was talking about what I consider the greatest year in comics. And then after that, I started talking about creators whose work I recognized instantly when I saw them. And then from there, I started talking about my favorite characters. And currently, I'm up to character number 4, which is Superman. And I talked in my previous videos, I went through like the history behind Superman and how the history of Superman kind of ties in with the history of comics. And I talked about how I got into reading Superman, and it was largely through John Byrne's work, which is why this is called John Byrne and Friends. He's not the only one involved in these trades, but it was him that got me collecting the comics. And if you see why I never really collected Superman before, you look at my previous videos and I explain all of that stuff. In either case, we're talking about this is they're reprinting all of his series, and this is number 7 in the Man of Steel series by Byrne. Marv Wolfman used to write The Adventures of Superman, and he left the book, and John Byrne started writing it based on plots that Jerry Ordway was turning in. And the only thing that, according to what Jerry Ordway wrote, and I apologize, I think I'm pronouncing his name wrong. The guy deserves much better than that. But according to what I read on Jerry Ordway, he would write the plot and send it to John, and John Byrne would just make some changes that would make it flow better with continuity and with what the books that John Byrne was working on. The books that John Byrne was working on was the Superman book and the Action Comics book. I'm going to get into all of that right now. And finally, with this book, they have the covers not in the back of the book, but up front with with the comic itself, which finally it makes sense. I don't know if they reprinted the old ones this way. I hope they did, but this is finally they got it set up. Anyway, we're in Millennium here. Now, Millennium was a miniseries that DC had that it was a weekly miniseries. It was the first time something like that had been attempted in American comics, where each issue comes out once a week. And then all the other issues that came out that week tied into Millennium. And this is week 2, and it ties into Millennium, and Superman is facing off against Toyman. Now, the beginning of the story has Superman facing off against Toyman. And it doesn't, at first you're like, this doesn't really make sense as far as Millennium's concerned. And then we get towards the end after he beats Toyman. And one of the things I wanted to point out real quick was John Byrne's artwork on this. I mean, this look at how beautiful this is. And he's not alone. He's got Carl Kessel inking, and Carl Kessel's a great inker. But then we cut back into the Daily Planet where Superman's returning from his fight with Toyman. And here's where it ties in with Millennium. And I don't normally reveal the endings of the stories, but I'm going to do it in this time because it's actually the beginning of the book. And it ties into something that happens later on. But Clark Kent goes back to his desk, and all of a sudden Lana shows up. Lana Lang. Lana Lang was his childhood best friend in this new version of Superman, which is After Crisis. And Clark is wondering, like, what are you doing here? and she shows up and she's angry at him and she's kind of yelling at him a bit. And then she rips open his shirt to reveal his Superman costume underneath, except he's not wearing it. He took it off. And then she jumps out the window and flies away. And Superman doesn't know what's going on. And of course, no one else does either. Everyone's sitting there, this Cat Grant and Jimmy Olsen, they're wondering what happened. And then, Superman goes off on his adventure. And then we have the next issue, and this is what I was talking about. It says by Byrne, Ordway, and Beatty. John Beatty was inking, and Jerry Ordway was co-plotting along with John Byrne. And then John Byrne would follow up with the script after Jerry drew the book. And I wanted to show you how great Jerry Ordway was. One of the reasons the title is called And Friends is because there were others involved, and it's unfair to just say it's John Byrne's Superman. He is the one who got me to read the book, but, I was privileged to have Jerry Ordway also working on the other book. I mean, look at this artwork. Look at how the tree is shaded, the light's coming in on this side, and it sends a shadow across here, and then the light's hitting Superman, and his one side is in shadow there, the face and the shading on the face. And what they do is he goes back to Smallville because, of course, Lana Lang just jumped out the window and flew away, and he wants to find out what's happening. And everything kind of looks normal to him, and then he kind of finds out that it's not. And they tell you a little bit about what's going on, and the Guardians of the Galaxy created the Manhunters, which were robots who they had them go out to patrol the skies, but something in their programming malfunctioned. They were artificial intelligence, and they weren't able to do everything they wanted to do. They were kind of going against their command. So they ended up creating the Green Lantern Corps, the Guardians created the Green Lantern Corps to fight the Manhunters. And what the Manhunters did was they ended up putting sleeper agents on Earth all over the place. And I don't want to reveal too much, but it ties into the whole Millennium thing. And the Millennium was about the Manhunters, coming into this Earth. We were discovering about their sleeper agents. In either case, I wanted to show you the artistry of Jerry Ordway here a little bit. And what we have here is look at how he would look, and he's looking through different layers with his X-ray vision. His artwork was really, really excellent. Still is, but I don't see him doing comic books anymore. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was I'm skipping all the others, and I'm going to this issue here of Action Comics, which is After Millennium. And this is like a typical Silver Age cover. It's not drawn by John Byrne. It's drawn by Kirk Schaeffenberger. And it may have been drawn by Byrne with Schaeffenberger inks, but I see Schaeffenberger in here. I don't really see Byrne. And Mr. Byrne says that I guarantee you this scene does not appear. That's part of John Byrne's sense of humor. Anyway, it kicks off with Lois Lane coming to Smallville, okay? And one of the reasons why I wanted to focus on this a little bit is one of my problems with modern day comics is you have the characters, they've been around for 70, 80 years, and in some cases, but these characters are sitting around, and you want to tell new stories about them, which is fine. I get that. But what I see now is that you take most of the creators take the characters and they change who they are inside their core character. So what happens is you have somebody who looks like Superman. He's dressed in Superman's costume, but he's not acting the way Superman would act. The Man of Steel, if you compare the Christopher Reeve Man of Steel with the recent Man of Steel with Henry Cavill, you see the difference between the two. I don't blame Henry Cavill for that. I blame Zack Snyder, who directed the movie. But that's another whole nother issue. He's trying to update the modern story, but he takes away the core of who Superman is in this retelling and this updating. And to me, you keep the core, but you just put him in the new situations and tell the story. And Lois Lane was a character that, when I was growing up as a kid, before Crisis, she was a character I never really paid much attention to. there was a book out called Superman's Girlfriend Lois Lane, and what would happen is that she would spend a lot of her time. They were like these goofy adventures, mostly for kids. A lot of young girls, bought and read it. But in a lot of the stories, Lois Lane would go after and try to prove who Superman was. She believed Superman to be Clark Kent, and she would try to prove it. And at the time, it was a Silver Age Superman, so he would use his godlike powers to kind of make it look like a fool. But she kept trying to prove it over and over again. Well, something like that is good for a casual reader. If you're picking up one every 3 issues or one every 10 issues or whatever of Lois Lane or Superman. But if you're sitting there buying and continuously reading, it kind of gets tiring. And when John Byrne came along, he decided to figure out the relationship between Superman and Lois. And what he came up with, to me, made a lot of sense. What happened was in my first Superman video, I talk about how Lois Lane is trying to get the story on Superman. And all of a sudden, Clark Kent scoops her. He comes out of nowhere and scoops her. She doesn't know who this Kent guy is or anything. And she keeps calling him Kent, and she's like not really looking at him. She has this disdain for the guy because there's something about him she couldn't put her finger on. And through the years, he's trying to wear her down as Kent. And, she kind of liked his boyish charm, but she could never get over that that contempt that she had for him. She kept calling him Kent throughout the years. That was John Byrne's way of working out the relationship. Now, when it comes to, my experience with women, one of the things I've found out is that if a woman doesn't see you, she doesn't see you. And I'm not saying she's stupid or anything. She'll say, hi, how are you? How's everything? But she has other things on her mind, other things that she's thinking about. And she's not looking at you as really anything. She doesn't see your good qualities. And in fact, that's one of the things that made Superman who he is. It was a power fantasy for us kids. You're a kid, you're reading a story, and, girls aren't paying attention to you, and, people around you are bullying you and they're calling you an idiot. But inside, if they can figure out who you are inside, you're really Superman. That was one of the power fantasies as a kid. So when you get older, of course, you look at the world differently. But what happened with Superman and Lois Lane is because Clark Kent and Lois Lane, because Clark Kent had this disdain for Lois Lane had disdain for Clark, she never really looked at the guy, okay? Now, there was a TV show called Lois and Clark, The Adventures of Superman. And in that TV series, they were like really good friends and buddies. They were hanging out together and everything. And then this guy from the future came into the past, and he called Lois Lane one of the biggest dummies in the world because Superman was right next to her. That was when, in the TV show, they revealed that that guy from the future revealed to Lois Lane that Clark Kent and Superman are one and the same. And ever since then, people have been writing Lois Lane like she's some kind of dummy. Now, her Silver Age story, she was goofy, but she wasn't a dummy. She figured it out. And in John Byrne's Superman, she was just kind of ignoring him. She wasn't paying attention to him. But when Lana ripped open the shirt and jumped out the window previously in this story, that made her focus on him. And she started trying to find out. She knew there was a story there, and she started trying to find out what the story is. And I don't want to reveal too much, but she ends up going to Lana Lang's house, and she rounds the corner, and look what she sees there. And it's a rather awkward situation, and they start talking, and she finally says, Superman, are you Clark Kent? Now, I kind of want to end it there because I don't want to reveal how John Byrne resolves that. But that's kind of what I mean about characters. Nowadays, they eventually had Lois and Clark get married, and she obviously knows he's Superman. And they've changed the relationship, and that was also from the TV show. But people did kind of write her as if she's some kind of idiot. She couldn't figure out the two. So it's still the Lois Lane character, but they got her all wrong. And things like that kind of annoy me. Anyway, John Byrne did the relationship right, and this is a recommend. I want everyone to buy it and read it, and I'm pretty sure you're going to enjoy it. And this is Scott's Comics Retro Review. If you like the video, please like, subscribe, share, comment. Share it with friends and comment. Let me know what you think about that. Anyway, hope you have a great day. Thank you very much.